Hey guys, where we stand right now, we have just finished the picture book. Hopefully, you sent that in to me. If you haven't, you definitely still should. Even if it's late, it's extremely important that you do that book because this research paper that now we're focusing on is dependent completely on that book. Everything you write is going to be about what happened in that book. And without the book, there's just no way you can write the research paper. So even if it's late, you should still do the book and you should still send it to me. It's still worth points, all right? Now let's focus on the research paper a little bit. For the most part, you have just about everything you need to write this paper because it's really not that different than the other essays that we've done. All the elements that went into the other essays are going to go into this project as well. A couple of minor differences, and that's what I want to talk about this time is those couple of differences. If you notice on the assignment sheet that I gave you a little while back, it says that the essay must be a 10 paragraph essay and must be a minimum of 7 full pages plus one works cited page. Let's talk about what that works cited page is, okay? And to do that, we're going to go back to that essay I gave you way back at the beginning, the sample essay, the sample research paper. This is the essay that I uploaded on Canvas, gave it to you when we were talking about MLA format. This was the essay that we used. If you go to the very last page, which is not that, by the way, it's an additional page in addition to the last page, and this is it here, okay? This is the works cited page. All this is a list of the sources that you used, and that's it. That's the simplest way of thinking about it. It's just a list of where you got your information. When you're writing a research paper, just simply stating something as a fact isn't good enough, okay? Yes, the object of this research paper is to convince me that you wrote a really good children's book. But just saying you wrote a really good children's book isn't enough. That doesn't hold water. You've got to find some experts to back you up. And that's where the research comes in, okay? You're going to be researching each of those elements of literature. Each of those elements is in your book, and you're going to defend your choice in whatever choice you made, whatever creative choice was behind that element and how you used it in your book, okay? And that's where the works cited page comes in. So every time you find something, every time you find a piece of information, every time you find a really good quote that you want to integrate into your paper, well, you got to tell your reader where you got that quote from, okay? Whether it came from a journal or an article or a chapter from a book or a television show or a script from a play or an interview with a person who's an expert. These are all legitimate sources, but they have to be listed. They have to show up on that works cited page. And so just a few things I want to point out. The way it's structured, it has a very specific structure. For the most part, it looks just like the rest of the essay, okay? Everything we talked about as far as MLA format, that's true of this page as well. Notice, for example, that in the upper right corner, the student's last name plus the page number, that still goes there, just like the other pages, remember? Every single page gets your last name plus the page number. Same goes for this guy, because technically it's still a part of that essay. It gets its own title, okay? You just call it works cited. Don't call it anything else. That's the only name that you can call this thing. It's the only acceptable title for this because it's literally what it is. The works that are cited in your essay, and that's why we title it that. Each source that you got information from shows up as a separate entry on this page. So for instance, this person's essay, they used 4 sources. They found 4 pieces of information from 4 different sources, and that's why you have these 4 sources right here. Here's where it gets a little bit different. The format changes up a little bit differently than the rest of the essay. Normally, whenever you write a new paragraph, you indent, right? You hit the tab key, it indents, and then every other line in that paragraph goes along the left side, the left margin. And then when you get to a new paragraph, boom, it indents again. The first line gets indented, all the successive lines go against the left side of the margin. It's the opposite for a works cited page. Watch this. First entry, we're all the way at the left side of the left margin, aren't we? And then if it continues on to a second line, then it indents. And if this continued on, if it was a really long entry and went into a third line, it would also be indented. So the first line goes against the very left margin, and then all these successive lines get indented. Then when we go to our next entry, here's a new one right here, back to the left side, and it's a short entry, so it stops right there. Our third entry, again, goes to the very left side of the left margin, right? And then the next line indents. Fourth entry, goes all the way to the left. It seems like a minor detail, but I gotta tell you, I can't believe how many people get this wrong. They want to indent the first line because they're in the habit of doing that because that's how paragraph structure is. But these are not paragraphs, okay? They're works, they're sources that you took information from. So the rules change a little bit. One other thing I want to point out, notice that it's double spaced. Why? Because everything is double spaced. The entire essay from top to bottom is double spaced. We talked about this when we talked about MLA format. The reason I'm really harping on you about this is because, again, I get so many works cited pages that for some reason come in single spaced. I have no idea why this is, but people will just insist on making this single spaced. I suspect it's because they went to a website, a web page that creates it for you. You know, you can do that. You don't have to create this way. You don't have to do this the old-fashioned way anymore. You guys are really lucky. Oops. You guys are really lucky. Oh, crud. How did I do that? There it is. You guys are really lucky in that the internet will basically create this thing for you. If you go online and just Google works cited page generator, you'll see a bunch of them will come up. And all you got to do is enter the information, okay? So when you were looking for information, if you got this from, if your source was a book, for example, and you found a really great quote from a book, well, you got to tell your reader what book it was. Well, that's where this comes in right here, okay? All the information about that book is going to be printed right here on this first line. The author's name, the title of the book, the title of the article, and blah, 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 blah. It's different for every kind of source that you use. Every one of them has different information, and so they have a different rule about how it's printed out. We'll talk about a little bit more about that in a minute, but just know that that information is online. A lot of teachers will have their students buy a handbook, the MLA handbook. I don't have you guys buy that because, to be honest, it's a waste of money because you can get it for free online. You can actually go to the MLA website and get this information for free, or you can simply just type in, how do I cite, and then just say what it is. How do I cite a journal article? How do I cite a textbook? How do I cite a lecture? Just type that into Google and it'll literally just tell you the information that you need in order to go on your works cited page. Now that's pretty much it. That's really all I need to say about the works cited page. There's not a whole lot to say about it other than the information that actually goes on there. And like I said, you can find a website that'll do this for you. If you notice, if you remember on the assignment sheet that I gave you, it says, in addition to the 10 paragraphs, the works cited page, it talks about the actual sources that you have to use. Right here, you will need to use a total of 7 sources to back up your argument. Again, 7 sources because there are 7 elements of literature. So if you have one source for each of those elements, that's great. You took care of it. However, one little stipulation here, and I put it in red. 3 sources must come from scholarly journals. That's academic journals, okay? If you don't know what a scholarly journal is, it's basically a magazine for a very specialized reader. You probably have a major. There's probably a field that you're studying right there now, and that's why you're in college. There is a journal specifically for you. There is a journal for every area of study. So for example, if you're a veterinarian, you read journals that are meant for veterinarians. If you are a medical doctor, there are journals just for you. If you're an architect, there are journals that are meant just for you. No matter what it is, there are journals that have information that are meant just for you because only you would understand the information that's inside of it. That's going to be you one day when you've got a career in a very specific field. There will be journals for you. I need you to use at least 3 journals to get 3 sources to make up your argument, all right? The other 4 can come from literally anything else. Magazine articles, textbooks, television shows, lectures, whatever. But 3 of them got to come from a scholarly journal. So how do you do that? Well, I want to show you. There's a really, really easy way to do it. You don't even have to step into a library. The easiest way is if you go to, there we go. Go to the Mount SAC homepage, mountsac.edu, and this is the easiest way I know of to get there. You can also just type in the address if you already have it. But if you go to Mount SAC's website, there is a link at the bottom right there for the library. Click on that. It takes you directly to the library. Now, we're interested in databases because this is where we're going to find scholarly academic articles. So click on the button here before you do any searching. Click on databases. And then you end up with a list of a bunch of databases. Some of them are very specialized. Some of them are generalized. Some of them have specific kinds of information or types of sources. But I want to give you a hint. My favorite one, the one that I used to get me through my bachelor's and my master's degree for the most part, was this third one that comes up right here. Academic Search Complete. You'll notice it even says popular next to it because it really is very complete. It's got so much information, you don't need any of these other ones. So I suggest you use that. You don't have to, you can use any of these. But this one's nice, and I'll tell you why. Oops, I forgot to log in. By the way, you do have to log in. And the reason why is this is just for students, okay? The fact that you go to Mount SAC and pay fees means that you have access to this information. Normally, you would have to pay for this. If you wanted to look at these journals online, you would have to actually buy it first and then read it. But because you belong to Mount SAC, they pay the fee, and so you've got access to this, but you got to prove you're a student, so you do have to sign in. It takes you to this site right here, okay? This is the Academic Search Complete. One thing before you start searching, scroll down a little bit where it says peer-reviewed, check that box. And what that means is it's only going to show me scholarly journals. Scholarly journals are peer-reviewed, which literally means reviewed by peers. So before they decide to publish an article, they have this board, this panel of experts that go over, they pore over every article and they discuss the merits of it, and they talk about whether or not it meets their criteria to show up in their journal. So it always has to pass this test. So this idea of knowing whether something is trustworthy or not, if the information is trustworthy, that was one of the videos I had you watch. One of the things he mentioned was scholarly journals, because almost all the time, almost always, you can trust them. Now, there are some shady journals out there that'll print basically anything for a fee, just so that you can say it was printed in a scholarly journal. Kind of an underhanded thing, but that's pretty rare. For the most part, the ones that are going to show up in this search, they're legitimate journals. So you click peer reviewed and go back to the top and then look up what you're looking for, okay? So I need something to look for. As an example, remember my book was about the bunnies who go on a picnic in the forest and one of them gets lost. Let's say I want to talk about plot. That was the first category, the first element of literature that came up, plot. So I'm going to write my paragraph about the plot of my story, but I need something to back it up. So in my plot, there was a family of bunnies. They go on a picnic. The youngest bunny gets separated from its parents and gets lost and goes on an adventure and meets some interesting characters. Now, like I've said before, there's no way I'm going to find a journal article that's about a bunny who gets separated from his family while on a picnic and goes on an adventure. That is way too specific, and ultimately it's kind of silly, right? Why would anybody write a journal article about that? But I can take one element of that and I can look that up. So for example, an important element of my plot is that bunny gets lost, right? It gets separated from its family. So there's something right there. That's an important element of my story, and that's an element that I actually can research. It's not too specific, but it's still important to the overall story, the overall plot of my story. So if I were to type in something, and this is where it gets really tricky, you got to just try different keywords, okay? Every sequence of keywords is gonna come up with different results, and you might have to try this several times before you get something that finally looks pretty good. I'm gonna type in separation anxiety. Look at that right there. Separation anxiety in children. That's perfect. That's exactly what I'm writing about in my story, and I think that's going to be an important element. So I'm going to click on that, and let's just see what it comes up. It comes up with 314 different articles that somehow touch on the subject of separation anxiety in children. Now, obviously, you're not going to go and read every one of these, but you'll find that the titles give you a lot of information. Sometimes just by skimming these and looking at the titles, one of them, or more than one of them, if you're lucky, will jump out at you. Ooh, this looks actually pretty interesting. Early childhood trajectories of separation anxiety bearing on mental health, academic achievement, physical health. That's really interesting to me. So I'm going to try this one out. Don't click on the title because it won't necessarily give you the article. Sometimes it'll just give you a summary of the article. If you want to actually read the article, look for the PDF full text and click on that instead. What you're going to get is an exact replica of what that hard copy journal looks like. If I were to check out the actual journal from the library, the page would look exactly like this. It's almost as if this was just scanned directly from the page. All right, that's what this is. So the way journals work is usually they'll give you a synopsis of it first, and that'll give you an idea of what it's about. And if it looks interesting, well, then you can start skimming it or read it more carefully if you want to. Go through this thing and start looking for information, a good quote that you can pull out of this. The results in the discussion often have some pretty good information. Once you find that quote that proves your point, so let's say I find a quote that says, children often have separation anxiety due to blankety blank blank blank, and it's really important that they are supported in a loving environment by blankety blank blank blank, and they learn blankety blank blank blank. Okay, I'm just gonna just pick anything just to give you an idea. So let's say this is the one I found. Oh yeah, that's perfect. That's the exact quote I want to put in my paper. I'm just gonna cut and paste this and put it aside for now. If I'm already writing my essay, I could just take this and just paste it right into my essay, right? Remember where you got it from, though. That's incredibly important because when we were talking about that Works Cited page, this information here, this is where I got it from. All of this information. This is important because this is going to go on that Works Cited page. A neat thing about this, if I go back to where I was, the previous page, all of this information right here, this is actually what's going to go on my Works Cited page. All the info I need is right there, planned out for me perfectly. But if you're using one of those sites that'll make the Works Cited page for you, it's even easier. It's just a matter of telling them where you got it. Sometimes you can simply go to the top, and here is all the information, the URL where I found it. Sometimes, depending on the Works Cited page site that I find, you can just take that and cut it and paste it right into the website, and then they'll go and look it up, and then they'll show you what it should look like on your Works Cited page. Do a search for those sites because they're incredibly helpful. They'll just do all the work for you. But that's it. That's how you find a journal, all right? 3 of your sources need to be done this way. And it has to be 3 different journals, not 3 from one journal, but 3 different journals. So remember, one source for each of the 7 elements of literature, and 3 of them have to come from academic journals, scholarly journals, just like here, like what I showed you, all right? That's basically what I wanted to show you. I wanted you to see what a works cited page actually looks like and let you know that there are sites that can make it for you. And then I wanted you to see how to get to the actual scholarly journals, how you can look them up and how you can pull from them and get information from them. Definitely use this site. It's so easy to do. Like I said, however, very often you might find that it just doesn't give you much information. If you're looking for something that's too specific or too focused, you're probably not going to get 314 hits like I did. You might just get a couple and they might be useless to you. So it's important to go back, okay? Go back to what you typed in and try something different. Type in different words, different search terms, and see what happens. And if it's just not happening for you, you might have to change the search completely, okay? Something that you actually can look up. This is probably the hardest part of the essay, I would say. This is the hardest part of writing a research paper, is finding that information to back up what it is that you believe in. And in this case, what you believe in is the book that you made, all right? Remember, the whole point of this essay is to prove to your reader that you wrote an engaging, a good, a quality children's book. That's what this is all about. So basically, that's it. That's what I wanted to show you, all right? So keep working on the essay. You've still got plenty of time to be working on this. Remember, I extended that due date past the last day of class to the 11th. This thing is still due on June 11th, so it's giving you a lot of time to work on this thing. If you've got questions, email me. Let me know. But other than that, just keep writing and keep researching, guys. And I will have more information for you soon.